Right now, without any further ado, let's hear it for Clare Mann.
Thank you. The topic I've chosen today, and I hope you can see that, is thriving as a vegan. Who here is a vegan? There's quite a few of you. Now, for so many of us, of course, we go through a lot of stages before we thrive. In fact, many of us never quite get to that stage. Because as Jason has just shared, there is so much information out there. When we suddenly realize what happens to animals in the industrial process, and then what happens in the environment, the way we've been duped by industry and government, there's an existential crisis almost, and we find that we're not thriving, we're merely surviving. Okay, now who here came to veganism through animal social justice? When you suddenly learn that how animals are treated, that we, in the industrial process, that 7 billion of us a year use, murder, rape, sell, eat 150 billion animals a year. Now that is so outstanding to us. So we really need to get to a stage where we can thrive and share this information with people confidently. Now, a lot of people merely survive, as I think I've just said. Now, I'm a psychologist, and I talk to people all over the world who say, when I hear about this information, I feel so traumatized. And it's really because we go through a grief process. We find a sort of depression, a loss, disbelief in how our society is, and we despair for other people. Is anybody at that stage at the moment? When they start to look, it's great that it's not all of you, and I hope you've transitioned through it, because coming to events like this, we feel inspired. Because I want you to know that we are the ones we've been waiting for. The work is in our hands to share the gift with other people, as Jason just said. Now, the reality is, a lot of people, when they see information on Facebook, or they hear the news, or they hear about the live export trading increasing, they become even more desperate. And they find it difficult when there is so much emotion around to communicate veganism more effectively. Who would like to communicate veganism confidently and effectively where people say, tell me more? Everyone should put their hand up. And today we have a solution for you, because together I want us to collaborate to get this message out to the world. And I'm going to try and make it really easy for us in the palm of our hand with a smartphone, which I'll share in a moment. Now, a lot of this happens then that every time we turn on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, if we see traumatic information, it triggers off something in our brain. Now, do we have any neuroscientists here before I start sharing information about it? Great, lovely, because I'm going to do the very general guide to this. But let's have a look. Let me just take a general example of when we feel something, say, negative. Say you've had an argument with someone and that conversation has gone on in your mind and you think, gosh, my sister really spoke to me in a really negative way. That results in a certain feeling and sensation in the body because negative hormones have gone into the bloodstream and we go, oh, I feel awful, I feel angry at my sister or whatever. We then label it as an emotion. I feel angry, I feel anxious. And then it results in another thought and we go, gosh, I'm really upset with her. So in other words, the thought creates the feeling creates the thought creates the feeling creates the thought, until we got this ongoing emotion. And then the slightest trigger to the conversation with your sister that was negative results in this whole pattern happening without us even thinking. Now let's think about veganism. Let's think about when people start to make fun of veganism, or they talk about live exports being a great thing, or animal testing is essential because we should look after humans. Let's have a look at that. So someone thinks about something, even in their mind, or they see an image. This results in anger. You've had that sensation in your stomach, the thought and feeling connection happens, people feel angry. So then it results in hopelessness and despair. So every time you hear something that isn't moving in the direction of a more compassionate world, that internal process happens automatically. Now, the wonderful news, of course, is when we have the opposite thing happening, when we've got a positive outlook, when we believe that veganism is on the increase, that the world is becoming more compassionate, that there is real change in the world, we start to feel positive emotions. So the thing happens in the same way, and this time we feel hope, because all those wonderful happy hormones get released into our bodies. But the reality is we cannot consciously just tell ourselves to be more positive. There's things that have to happen in the brain for this automatic process for us to feel that uplifted. Okay, Let's have a little look. Because when we feel anything or think anything, neurons in the brain start firing. And neurons that fire together wire together. So if we feel negative things and we've got those negative thoughts and feelings going on, we start to feel things in our body, and the neural pathways in the brain are almost like major roadways. They become ingrained. And so you only have to think the slightest thing, it triggers all these reactions off. And that is probably why when you feel, gosh, I'm trying to sort of be positive, I'm trying to have a great outlook, and you try and sometimes you can't. And then you look at other vegans and you think, gosh, they're even on the front line. They go and stand at the slaughterhouse, and yet they're still positive. How do they do it? Because they've learned certain strategies to rewire their brains in ways that trigger off the positive reactions, okay? Because when we create a pattern, positive or negative, just even the thought of it triggers this response off. Does anybody know about this? Okay, it's pretty extraordinary, isn't it? But the lovely thing is, in everything I teach, is around, within every problem is the solution, of course. So let's have a look. What is the solution then if you're someone who, like all of us, have gone through the angry vegan stage that wants to transition into being positive and being of service to the world? How do we do this? The first thing is, I say to people, don't re-traumatize yourself. You know, I look at certain images and videos when I've got to talk about them. Okay, I do a lot of work around particularly factory farming and live exports. That's a particular area of service I like to look at. But I don't over-traumatize myself. You don't have to look at everything. You have to take action. Because once you've made that decision to be part of this global movement of positive change in consciousness, what you've got to do is not re-traumatize yourself. Okay? The next thing you need to do is you need to rewire your brain. Okay, because remember I said that nerve cells that no longer fire together, no longer wire together. In other words, if we don't do the negative thing, we don't reinforce it. But also, if we rewire our brain in a positive way, we can actually slip into that way, because nerve cells that wire together, fire together, the positive ones. Okay, so we think positive things, we feel positive things, it automatically, we can switch ourselves into that. But we can't do it consciously, we have to do something else. So what do you need to do? The first thing is become aware of the triggers and the reactions. Look at your mood, look at your self-awareness. When do you feel uplifted and positive about the world? And when do you feel negative and think nothing will change? Okay, now the majority of us and the majority of our population in everyday life, in fact, just react in this sort of way. They sometimes they feel good, sometimes they don't, and they don't realize that they've got a handle on that, okay? We have to learn to extinguish the associations. Now, firstly, yes, you don't keep looking at traumatic information, but you have to do more. We've got to work actively to create new positive neural pathways, so that when we think about anything or we see anything that's not working to our favor, we see as an increase in something negative on our media, for instance. Number one rule, get rid of your television. That's probably one of the most positive things I can tell you today. But we have to look immediately, if we've put in place that patterning of thoughts and feelings, it becomes automatic. We can switch to another place. And I'm not talking about distraction, because that's not helpful in the long term. How do we create the neural pathways? I can't see this very well, so I'm half working in the dark here, so I sort of can see a little bit of it. Now, there's only one person who put around about neural pathways. If you're going to do that, you have to make a change in your neurology, your brainwave state, actually. What does that actually mean? Let's have a look at this. At the top, this is about different brainwaves. Okay, if you were to look on a computer and look at the speed with which the waves move in your brain, at the moment, all of us are in beta. We're active, we're learning something, we're attending, but we're not feeling highly stressed, or at least I hope we're not. Okay? When people are overwhelmed, they're distressed, they see information that upsets them, or they despair of the world, they're in high beta, high active waves working. We're in fight or flight then. We cannot open our hearts and minds to other people. We're angry. All the stress hormones release into our body. At the moment, we're in sort of mid-beta, low beta. We're not upset. We're positive. And that is really the analytical mind. That's when we're conscious and our logical thinking mind. Who here daydreams during the day? That's right, and great ideas come into your head and you think, oh gosh, I must do that. Or in the shower, people come up with great thoughts. That's because we're slipping into alpha, when the waves slow down. Okay, and when we find ourselves in that situation, that's when ideas come up from the unconscious, where we get ideas, we get innovation, we get creativity. Okay? But also when we're relaxing at night, we slow down. And in fact, that lovely, delicious time just before you go into sleep, we slip into alpha, the brain waves slow down, we move into theta, delta, and ultimately, of course, we're asleep. Anyone who does meditation is able to bring their brain waves and their whole neurology into a relaxed state, but still be awake. The reality is, if you're in high beta, anxious, reactive, despairing of the world, and negative, that is when you're in fight or flight, and also you're unable to make new neural connections. You might say, I've got to become more positive. I can't keep thinking like this. I feel terrible. You can't do it when you're in the active state. So you have to bring yourself to a state of slowing down the brain waves and then associating that with a vision of the future, of really the positive future we're looking at, and associate it with higher positive emotions. Okay? Now, let's have a look at this. So, change occurs then in the alpha state, when you slow your brain waves down, okay, when you're more relaxed. And that's why the maxim is true. When we change ourselves, we change the world, okay? What we need to do is really through meditation or relaxation, you've got to get very clear about this new vegan world. I have a vision. When people say to me, I won't see a vegan world in my lifetime, I say, don't you believe it? Okay, it may not all come through consciousness. It may come through disease, it may come through economics, it may come through all sorts of reasons. The reality is we don't have to change the world, we have to change ourselves and actually a small number of people, because most people follow. I think that was true from what Jason said, we know that. So, we're bringing our brain waves down, and I'm going to show you some of the ways in which we can do that. And then we're going to have a really clear vision of the future. We want to move towards pleasure, not away from pain. If we say, gosh, I can't look at those images, I don't like the world, I'll distract myself, that is not good enough. Because as soon as you see a negative image, that pattern will link in. You've got to hold a vision for the future. So when I look out at what happens out there today, when I look at 20,000 people walking through these doors today and lots of non-vegans here really asking questions, that's the future that I see. That was the future that Mark Donoghue saw and his team, and lots of people here in this movement, all of you in fact. You've got to hold that vision very strongly. So what we need to do, and it's something I do regularly, is really we need to learn how to meditate. Now, I'm not talking about necessarily just clearing our minds, bringing yourself down to a state of relaxation, okay? And I can teach you how to do this. Unfortunately, we don't have time today, but I'm going to show you some strategies and ways in which you can get hold of that. And then to get really clear, write a pen picture of this fantastic new world we're creating. When I sit down and I meditate, and I literally slow my brain waves down through relaxing music, I have a vision of the future, a vegan world, where animals are free, where people are healthy, when our environment, Mother Earth, has come back and is supporting us and we're supporting her in the way we should be. A clear vision, but then I feel the emotions I anticipate feeling when that world comes. If you look at any great achievements in human history, they start from a belief in our mind and an emotion that we will have an unrelenting pursuit of that goal. Each of us need to do that, okay? So there's a little program there. I'd love to share more time and teach you how to do some meditation, but there's a little program there. You can actually get some free training on managing and moving from that state of anxiety and grief into a more positive state. So in a very short time we've got, there's two things we need to do then. We need to change our mindset. We need to regularly get into an alpha state through meditation and relaxation. And then we need to have that vision of the future and then experience it with an elevated sense of emotion. And it's not just a feel-good factor. We know when people do transcendental meditation, and large enough numbers of people do this, it is correlated with shifts and changes and reductions in negative things happening on our planet. It's not just a sort of feel-good factor here. Things are happening in the outside world when we do that. The other part of this, of course, is when you get yourself to a state of this vision of the future and a more relaxed state that people look at you and say, hey, I want to be vegan, this is wonderful, you need to know how to communicate it effectively. Now, who here finds difficulty in communicating these very challenging issues around environment and animal issues and health? Absolutely. It's nice to know a lot of people perhaps have a level of comfort about that. But the majority of people I see are so incensed by the lies and the deceit of our governments in industry and a level of greed, and also how people are duped, as Jason said, that they operate in that beta state and they're anxious and they're fight or flight, and then they can't convince anybody. So the first stage is to manage ourselves, but then also to learn strategies and skills to get people leaning forward and saying, hey, tell me more about this. I want to know about what you're telling me, as opposed to, don't tell me about this, it's too upsetting, or other reactions. So what we need to do is learn specific skills of having crucial conversations. A crucial conversation is where the emotions are high, the opinions differ, and the stakes are high. So by managing ourselves to start, we then need to learn specific skills, which is what I want to show you, which is a very exciting day for us here. Because today we are launching something called Vegan Voices. Anybody ever heard about this? If you've got an iPhone, you may know about it. I'm the co-author of the 30-day challenge for the Sydney Vegan Club, and I was asked to produce 30 answers to specific questions that all vegans get asked. What is the most classic one? Philip? Where do you get your protein? Where do you get your B12? We've always done this. You're upsetting the family, all these things. If we don't eat animals, they'll overrun the planet. What would you do if you were on a deserted island? Okay, let's just test the strength of the vegan to see if they would eat animals. There's all this stuff. And of course, we've all noticed that as soon as somebody hears you're vegan, they become a nutritional expert, of course. They didn't worry about your protein before, now they're going to ask you. But the reality is, when we've been asked that 50 times, we can get cynical or sarcastic. That results in other people's brains going into the beta state and saying, gosh, shooting the messenger. So when we relaxed ourselves and we start to learn different skills. So I took those 30 bits of information to the Sydney Vegan Club, and with the help of two amazing people there, could you both put your hands up, please? Those two gentlemen there who have worked for hundreds of hours. We have put all this information as a free training for vegans into a smartphone app called Vegan Voices. And today we're thrilled to launch it to actually let you know that in the palm of your hand, you can receive free video training on how to deal with these issues. This is the smartphone app. It's in Android and iPhone. And I'm just going, would anybody like to see a quick sort of demonstration of one of the videos? You should all be putting your hand up at the moment. Excellent.
Now, often people say to you, I could never give up meat or dairy because I just love the taste so much. Now, before you have a strong reaction to that, remember that many people just don't understand what goes on in the production of their food and the consequences for animals, people, and the environment. So your job is to try and ascertain their level of knowledge. Maybe they're saying they don't care or that their taste buds are more important than wondering about the consequences. But often there's a level of guilt, and people use bravado to try and cover that up. So before you react, your job is to ascertain what do they know about the production of food, and if I was to give that to them, would they react differently? Or is the statement coming from a place of thinking that vegan food is bland and tasteless? Now, if they don't know anything about the food production, you could say something like, I also like tasty food, but I learned that meat and dairy production involves enormous suffering for animals and ultimately the loss of their lives. Can I tell you more about this so you can see what's involved? In other words, you make a contract. If they give agreement, share the information without judgment of their current choices. Offer to show them more information through literature and films. This will increase their understanding. If they resist the information, in other words, if they don't care or they say, I don't want to hear any more, you can say something like, okay, what you seem to be saying is that our taste buds are more important than animal suffering and the enormous cruelty and misery to satisfy our taste buds. Note the use of the word our taste buds, our habits. This minimises their sense of feeling judged. You could say, I certainly don't believe this is acceptable. I find that people don't really know what's going on. Can I send you a link to this footage or a film, etc., so that you can see more on this, and perhaps we can have a conversation afterwards? I also wonder if you assume that vegan food is tasteless and bland. Do you know vegan food is amazing and it's fantastic for your health? How does it get better than this? So it's very important to ask questions and ascertain where people are coming from. Remember, you are moving them along a continuum of lack of awareness to full awareness. But you've got to know your audience, because if you were to launch in about animal cruelty, when they're just making a statement that they believe vegan food is bland, you could lose that person. Now you also see in the responses I gave, use the word our taste bud, our understanding. It makes a sort of sense that we're all in this together and somehow we've been duped. So by doing this, you get people leaning forward and more open to reading and watching the material that you will send them.
Thank you. So that's Vegan Voices. Thank you. Now, there are 30 days of free training between about 3 and 6 minutes. Now, just imagine you've picked up one of those videos and you think, now I understand, I can see a bit of a logic of how I should communicate this. But you know when you go around to your mum's and you're going to talk to her or a member of the family or someone, they're going to ask you all these crazy questions. So then, of course, the other part of the app is that there is a resources section. This is the resources section. There are areas on environment, on health and animal social justice, on feminism, and on there are articles and videos and documentation and scientific results that you can, at the touch of literally pressing here, you can see also that's a tickle. It has a rating from a sledgehammer to a tickle. So if you were to show people Earthlings, who knows Earthlings? Very challenging film which has moved more hearts and minds towards animal social justice. That would be a sledgehammer. But a little nudge telling someone where they got their protein from, so you can actually see, if I'm going to forward my mother an article or a video or send information to her or someone else, I'm actually going to have to be able to rate that easily. Oop, seem to have lost something here. Here we go. Also, I believe in collaboration, because in this movement there really is no competition, and nor should there be. Together we have a guardianship of this planet and the people and the animals we share it with. So I want us to collaborate, because all of you on your emails or in an Excel spreadsheet, I no doubt you've got articles or links that you send people. Am I correct? Who has that? I do. Perhaps it's only me. Perhaps it's all in your head. But the reality is that you often will show someone something, a kind of whole range of things. It could be about canned hunting, it could be about testing. And you think, where's that link? Where's that thing from Animals Australia or VegVic? And so you're going to be able to submit resources to this to help vegans around the world communicate veganism. So together, all of us can truly become a vegan voice. I think that's all I've got to say today, except a really big thank you to those two gentlemen who have worked hours, the technical people. I did the easy bit. I stood in front of the camera and shared my knowledge about communication and self-management. I encourage you to get this app. Please share it with other people. But most importantly, let's work together to raise the bar, to gather information that give other people the tools to share this. Because there's no argument against veganism at every level, as Jason said a moment ago. Let's make it easy for other people. You don't have to carry it all in your head. You just have to get people leaning forward so they say, tell me more. Thank you very much indeed.